In this video, we'll take a look at a few space games that offer a feature that Starfield does not, and that feature of course is seamless landing. But we won't focus on seamless landing, but instead we'll take a look at what the games are like outside of the cockpit and how they stack up against each other. Also in this video, you'll hear references to Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous Odyssey. However, these games are space sims and contain many complexities that most gamers simply won't want to deal with. This is especially true of Star Citizen due to its technical instability, but aside from that, you have to engage in such things as eating and drinking to stay healthy. And last I checked, there are no save points other than sleeping in your ship or checking in at a clinic at one of the game's space stations or localities. Also, each time you die, you lose everything you may have accumulated during your playthrough. This is also true in Elite Dangerous Odyssey unless you purchase insurance. There are many more things I could list, but I'm sure you get the idea. Outside of the cockpit, Starfield is a dumbed down steampunk version of Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous Odyssey. Now, to be clear, Star Citizen is still very much in development. However, once it's done, I expect its on-foot adventures to be very much like Starfield in terms of communicating with various in-game characters and just the overall feel of being in a populated environment. And of course, it's gonna look a lot more beautiful than Starfield. It must be acknowledged that the creators of Star Citizen is attempting to achieve something that gamers have never seen before. But for now, when it comes to life outside of the cockpit in space games, Starfield is leading the way in my humble opinion. You see, many lovers of space games hunger for something other than beautiful seamless landing experiences from space. They also want to feel like they're playing in an episode of The Expanse. They want epic on-foot adventures to accommodate their spaceflight experience. Until Starfield, most of these types of space games began focusing on trying to achieve the ultimate spaceflight experience, and of course this included seamless landing, which Starfield currently doesn't feature. But eventually fans of these types of games began to express their desire for something more, to experience something more. They wanted ship interiors and their ability to walk around their ship, but they also wanted to experience adventures outside of the ship. But when it comes to the list of fantastic space games out there, one thing stands true: not one of them check all of the boxes. No Man's Sky is a fantastic game for what it is, but other than being a space game, it is absolutely nothing like Star Citizen, Starfield, or Elite Dangerous in style or gameplay. Everything about No Man's Sky, no pun intended, is alien to us as humans. It's hard for us to relate to it at all in terms of real life. The game wears its fantasy style on its shoulders for everyone to see. While playing it, you never once forget that you're playing a video game. In fact, while playing it, if you stop for a moment, the game looks very much like a very beautiful comic book. Over at nomansky.com, the devs stated the following: No Man's Sky is procedurally generated, but we always wanted to have a unique, recognizable style, to look like a science fiction book cover come to life. This is only possible because of our super talented art team. When we talk about No Man's Sky, we like to talk about the maths involved in creating the visuals, but really it's our artists that give the game its beautiful style. And I can attest that the game is truly beautiful. Sometimes I'll just find myself staring at the screen or just looking at my surroundings for several minutes. The beauty of the game just makes you want to keep walking to see what's over the next hill. Add that to the fact that the background music is intoxicating and almost hypnotic as you traverse the game's many landscapes. No Man's Sky is a game that makes an hour of gameplay seem like 5 minutes. Also, if you're into inventory management, you'll fall in love with No Man's Sky. Outside of the cockpit, No Man's Sky can be a game that feels very lonely, but most real space game fans gladly embrace this feeling. They know that it's probably how a lone space adventurer would really feel. The good news is, if this is something that really bothers you, the game does have multiplayer, so that's always an option. All of the space games that will be mentioned in this video have resource collecting, but in No Man's Sky, it is core to the game's gameplay. In fact, from the moment the game starts, you're tasked with collecting elements for your very survival. If you don't collect what you need, you will die within just a few minutes. Even set on normal, the game's challenge when it comes to survival is no joke. Thankfully, No Man's Sky settings offerings are the best I've seen in the space genre. You can customize your experience to your liking, so if you find yourself not enjoying the game, take a look at the settings before giving up on it. You can set the game so that you can enjoy it without the threat of dying every 10 minutes because you haven't collected a certain resource. But when it comes to communicating with the alien species you'll encounter, Many may find this task a bit tedious. I refer to it as a task because you actually have to learn to understand the languages that sound more like muffled gibberish, and in most cases what you will learn will be very limited. It is because of things like this that many may find No Man's Sky to be a boring experience. But all of the games that I'll discuss have been described as boring by many gamers. This seems to be a curse of the space genre, so if you're getting into space games for the first time, don't expect to fall in love with the first one you play. When it comes to on-foot and ship combat, to be honest, combat in No Man's Sky is okay at best. But No Man's Sky isn't about its combat, it's more about survival of the elements and collecting the right resources and exploration. It's about finding amazing discoveries. I certainly wouldn't advise picking up No Man's Sky for its combat. No Man's Sky is an exploration game in its purest form. Much of the combat was literally added as an afterthought and wasn't a part of the original release. No Man's Sky doesn't feature futuristic humanoid-style cities or towns with ghettos, criminal underworlds, and political corruption. You won't be offered contracts to assassinate anyone in No Man's Sky. It doesn't feature gangs that run the streets or politics of any cities, towns, or space stations. It's actually a break from all of that. As I stated earlier, No Man's Sky is a game that constantly reminds you it's a video game. Its art style and almost instantaneous, seamless flight landings from space onto a planet's surface are just two examples of this. But if you're someone looking for a space game that has fantasy written all over it, you would be hard pressed to find one that will outdo No Man's Sky.
Elite Dangerous Odyssey, unlike No Man's Sky, is a space sim. As much as it offers, it's hard to believe that it's just a DLC for Elite Dangerous, which was a game that was totally dedicated to the Cockpit experience. I must mention that among all of the games that I'll discuss in this video, when it comes to the ship engines, Elite Dangerous has the most amazing sound quality. But many players became dissatisfied with Elite Dangerous, believing the game needed to evolve into something more. Among the expressed desires for new features in the game were two that came up the most: ship interiors, meaning the ability to get out of the cockpit and walk around your ship, and the ability to disembark your ship to explore hangars and space stations on foot. In the on-foot gameplay introduced by Odyssey, players can engage in first-person shooter experiences, including gun battles. This expansion allows for a seamless transition between spacefaring activities and on-foot exploration, adding for a new layer of depth to the Elite Dangerous experience. Personally, I knew it was just a matter of time before players would begin to thirst for ship interiors. Unfortunately, this feature never came, but I personally understood this because I'm sure that creating ship interiors for so many ships is extremely difficult, but I'm still hoping it will come sometime in the future. However, the ability to exit the ship to visit space stations and other locales became a reality in Elite Dangerous Odyssey. You can also drive vehicles and walk on planets. In fact, in Elite Dangerous Odyssey, you can take a long break from your ship by using the game's shuttle system to go from planet to planet to complete various on-foot missions. When these new features dropped in Elite Dangerous via Elite Dangerous Odyssey, much of the fanbase was highly disappointed, especially since ship interiors wasn't included, but even the new on-foot experience was lackluster at best and full of glitches. Fortunately, the latter greatly improved over time and even became addictive for many players. For some, this was a nice break from the ship-based missions, which often was loaded with an assortment of complexities. In fact, taking the game ship training is practically a requirement in order to have any idea what you're doing or how to do it. As stated earlier, if your ship is destroyed and you have no insurance, you'll lose everything. The on-foot experience is awesome in my opinion. I really enjoy it. However, it must be said, even when you're in an environment surrounded by NPCs, the game doesn't feel as alive as Starfield. You don't hear sounds that you would hear in such a setting, like someone playing music in the distance or people in small groups having different conversations. Most AI just sit there moving just enough to let you know they're not dead. There are no cities or towns to walk around in, just surface ports and settlements. Everything in the game looks like structures you may see in Mass Effect. But EDO embraces its futuristic setting, whereas Starfield's aesthetic and style is more like NASA punk, or in some cases even cyberpunk. But even the on-foot gameplay in EDO involves complex gameplay and systems that many mainstream gamers may not like. Odyssey introduces various occupations, including mercenary work. When you first start, you may want to run right into the first gun battle, but you'll soon discover that you're outgunned because the game only starts you with a sidearm. You'll need to earn some money by knocking out a few safe missions like package deliveries to earn enough cash to properly armor and arm yourself. Elite Dangerous Odyssey is an outstanding game, but as I stated earlier, none of the games that I will mention in this video check all of the boxes, so I would definitely do my research on the game before purchasing it. Allow me to make this clear from the very beginning. There is very little that you can do in Star Citizen without flying your ship. The game has set out to redefine the space simulation genre by creating a living, breathing universe for players to explore. Beyond the vastness of space, the game introduces on-foot gameplay. However, with few exceptions, your ship will be required to get to the gun battles. However, the game now offers a tutorial and an introduction to navigating the game. It also offers various modes meant to introduce the player to various gameplay options. Some of these options are like tutorials or mini games, which is awesome. Star Citizen is an extremely ambitious project. The developers are truly building something like nothing gamers have ever seen. It's a true space sim that even in its gameplay mechanics may be too daunting or frustrating for most gamers, not to mention its performance issues. Squadron 42, an upcoming game that takes place in the Star Citizen universe, may be a dumbed down version of Star Citizen, but no one knows for sure yet. It is said that Squadron 42 is intended to be a revenue stream that will be invested in the continued development of Star Citizen. But I haven't been able to confirm that it won't be a space sim like its mother project, so for now I'll just assume that it will be. That said, you can expect anything that's affiliated with Star Citizen to be complex, at least on some level, and for the most part very frustrating for most players. Besides the fact that you have to do things such as stay hydrated and nourished, due to the technical state of the game, your gameplay session could crash at any time. If you die, you'll wake up in a medical facility where you may also have a medical bill. You'll also need to reclaim your ship, which will take a while unless you're willing to part with some cash. If not, you may as well walk around the spaceport for a while and maybe do some shopping. Once you make it to your ship, you'll need to ask for permission to take off. This is also the case for landing at space stations and aircraft hangars in the universe. There are no shuttles in Star Citizen, so using your ship is unavoidable. The only way to save in the game is by sleeping on your ship, which doesn't always work, or by checking into a medical facility somewhere in the universe. Usually when I play Star Citizen, I just fly around and look at the sights. I avoid all confrontations because dying in the game is a huge inconvenience. Depending on the circumstances, you could awaken far away from where you died. There was a rumor that a shuttle system was going to be added to the game, but that has yet to come to fruition. But even if it happened tomorrow, you'll still have those stern sim qualities to deal with. My first time dying in Star Citizen was caused by freezing to death while on a package delivery mission. I decided to do some exploring on foot and perished just before making it back to my ship. It was a hard lesson learned, never to be repeated. For now, walking in populated areas sounds like walking among the living dead. However, I do expect this to change in the future. And that is the key word when talking about Star Citizen. Star Citizen has a great future. For now, it is a niche project, a great and fun niche project, but a niche project that most gamers simply won't enjoy for right now. So far, we know that in both Elite Dangerous Odyssey and Star Citizen, you must travel to other planets via a ship. However, Elite Dangerous Odyssey does offer a shuttle service, but even the shuttle service forces you to go for the ride in real time. There are no cutscenes. By comparison, Starfield's flight system is much more simplistic than Star Citizen or Elite Dangerous Odyssey, and according to the devs, this is intentional. Bethesda was concerned about making the flight experience too tedious and time-consuming to get from one planet to another. They even dropped the idea of having to worry about fueling.
The only time you really fly your ship a lot in Starfield is when it's scripted into the story or when you're attacked by pirates, but even in the latter situation, you can simply use your jump drive to get away. My guess is that Bethesda wanted Starfield to feel like Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous to a certain degree, but they didn't want the game to become a niche game that only appealed to a small but loyal audience. They obviously wanted the game to be a mainstream hit. One could argue that when it comes to the game's flight mechanics, they could have simply used a style of seamless flight that's similar to No Man's Sky. However, I have a theory that had they gone with seamless flying, they probably would have leaned more towards a simulated design style rather than the simplistic seamless flight you experience in No Man's Sky. But between Bethesda, their in-house modders, and independent modders, I don't expect Starfield to go too long without some form of seamless flight. People have just made such a big deal of it, it's hard to imagine the feature will never come to the game. Like Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous, a ship is required to travel from one planet to another, but the question is, what is Starfield like once your destination is reached and you exit the cockpit? As I stated earlier, none of these games check all of the boxes, but when it comes to the player's experience outside of the cockpit, Starfield outshines both Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous, at least for now. Unlike the other games mentioned, in Starfield, life outside of the cockpit can get very interesting right away because Bethesda did such a great job with their ship interiors. As soon as you exit the pilot seat, not only do you have access to your ship's interior and some of its functions, you also have access to your crew. You'll find your crew doing random things like relaxing, sleeping, or working. The larger your ship, the more crew you can have on board. Some of your crew members may even have backstories that may lead to side quests. So in Starfield, things can get rather interesting from the moment you leave the cockpit. But what happens when you disembark your ship? Starfield offers feature-rich narratives and epic space operas that are similar to games like Mass Effect. In the game, you'll interact with various civilizations with different laws and customs. While visiting these locations, you can hear the sounds of the crowd, people in small groups chattering, and music playing in the distance. You can engage with many unexpected characters, many of which will ask you for favors, expanding your experience even more. You can visit ghettos or locations where people simply struggle to survive, or you can interact with the elites of society. Starfield is a game where it is definitely worth attempting to have a conversation with every NPC you run across. It may even pay off to be just a little bit nosy.
Look, man, have a heart. I can't pay right now, but I'll spot you next time, okay?
Do I look like an idiot? Tell me, do I have a sign that says idiot taped to my back?
No?
I know what you've been wasting your money on. Damn junkies. You pay the posted price, or you don't get anything at all. I'm running a business here. I don't give handouts.
You kidding? No one cares if you're addicted to the stuff. Hell, that's what they want.
Well, if it worked for you, I hope it works for me. I'm sick of feeling this way when I can't get a fix. I'll just rest until the doc's ready to talk to me.
Unlike the other mentioned space games, central to the Starfield experience is the presence of non-player characters with their own lives, stories, and quests. Many of the cities and towns in Starfield teem with life, offering players the chance to interact with a diverse array of characters. The dynamic storytelling that Bethesda is known for unfolds in the urban hubs, where players can immerse themselves in the rich narratives and even forge alliances. As the player, you can approach various NPCs for conversations to see if it will lead to other side quests. With the exception of main story NPCs, what you say could or make or break your relationship with an individual NPC or faction. Cities and towns in Starfield also serve as hubs for trade and commerce. The bustling markets, futuristic industries, and bustling spaceports within these urban centers play a crucial role in the player's journey. The economy and trade systems may offer players opportunities to amass resources and the wealth to upgrade their spacecraft, weapons, and attire. Unlike Elite Dangerous Odyssey, you don't need to worry about being scanned by so many guards because your entire ship will be scanned before you're even allowed to land anywhere on the planet. Starfield obviously took inspiration from Star Citizen and EDO. For example, if you take a look at this facility in EDO, it looks exactly like some of the locations in Starfield. Where Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen's game design strategy was to build their games from the inside out, focusing first on the cockpit experience, then later developing gameplay outside of the cockpit. Bethesda Game Studio seems to have adopted the opposite strategy. For example, while Star Citizen is just mentioning the idea of base building, you have players in Starfield who spent most of their gameplay sessions building and improving their bases, and that I know of, the Elite Dangerous development team has never even mentioned the idea of base building. Even after a couple of hundred hours of gameplay, Starfield is still chock full of random encounters. According to Lieutenant Buzz Lightyear, he's hundreds of hours in, and this is what he had to say.
Welcome back to the channel. It's Lieutenant Buzz Lightyear, and I've well eclipsed the 200 hours played mark into Starfield. I'm still running into random side content like the Dead Stop quest on Ilios, which I honestly was not expecting. It's just kind of random to stumble into it. But there are several items that I have noticed since update 1.8.86 went live that I don't see mentioned anywhere in these patch notes. And these may be stealth additions or even Bethesda trying out some new potential mechanics on the player base without first letting us know. The first of these additions, or what I'm calling additions, has to do with activities showing up on our star maps as we warp into a system. Now, I've seen them all. There isn't a system that I have not explored, and so what I'm now seeing after this update is that there are way more of these sensor contacts, ship icons, and other custom events showing up while in space. Sometimes these are just supply crates floating in space. I've been jumped by spacers or Varun. I ran into this derelict PCH custom ship with radiation poisoning throughout the ship that had killed the crew. I even ran into the legendary spacer ship, the Blatodia, which for me, even 200 plus hours in, is something I've never yet seen in Starfield.
One of the primary draws of space video games is the sense of awe and wonder that accompanies space exploration. Games like Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen strive for realism, simulating the enormity of the Milky Way galaxy and allowing players to chart their own course throughout the cosmos. The meticulous attention to detail in these games creates an immersive experience, instilling a profound appreciation for the sheer scale and beauty of space. They both also come with a very steep learning curve. They both offer seamless landing, and they both offer a great sim experience. But if I had to choose which is better, for now I would have to give the nod to EDO, simply because though it still has a ton of issues, it is at least a complete game. Star Citizen doesn't even have a cohesive story yet, and so much of what you're doing in the game currently involves creating your own fun. Bethesda already has modders officially on board to create extra content for the game, and I can guarantee you that some of them are already thinking about adding seamless flight for both the PC and the console versions of the game. Aside from those who have genuine concerns about Starfield, unfortunately for Bethesda, the game got caught up in a dysfunctional console war, causing some PlayStation fans to compare Starfield to games like Cyberpunk, which after a few years have been able to make the game that everyone wanted in the first place. The odd thing is neither PlayStation nor Xbox currently have a game like Cyberpunk, so why Cyberpunk is used like a blunt object to beat up Starfield is a mystery. This video covered life outside of the cockpit, but I'm currently working on a video about a game with the best cockpit in the space game genre, and that honor goes to Elite Dangerous. So watch out for that one. I don't know exactly when it's going to come out, but I'm working on it, and the main thing is that I really want to do a good job covering it, and you're going to be amazed at everything that it offers in the Elite Dangerous Odyssey cockpit. But look, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, and hey, if you got a problem with the video, give it a dislike as well. And hey, if you want to give me what for in the comment section, go ahead and do it. Just please stay respectful and try to refrain from throwing insults at anyone. Everyone's been doing a great job of that. So until next time, guys, stay safe.